You're listening to the AmWritingFantasy podcast. In today's publishing landscape, you can reach fans all over the world. Query letters are a thing of the past. You don't even need a literary agent. There is nothing standing in the way of making a living from writing. Join two best-selling authors who have self-published more than 20 books between them. Now, on to the show with your hosts, Autumn Burt and Jesper Schmidt.
Hello, I am Jesper.
And I'm Autumn.
This is episode 77 of the AmWritingFantasy podcast. And today's episode is sort of a continuation of last week's episode, where we shared 10 traits that makes a protagonist great. So today we will do the same thing, but this time it's the antagonist or the villain's turn.
And I was so looking forward to this one. And it ended up being so hard, so much harder than the heroes.
Yeah, it was actually. But I hope it's going to be just as much fun as last week, but at least in coming up with the 10 items, that was indeed a bit harder. I mean, as I said before we started recording, I felt like the first 6 or 7 of them, those were quite easy.
Oh, yeah.
But then number 8, 9, and 10 at the bottom end of the list, those were a bit harder.
Yeah.
I had to think a while about those.
Yeah, I would have been happy if we were coming up with the top 5 top traits for a villain. But I managed to. I told you this. I sat down this morning and stared at my computer until I came up with my final 2. I really had to force myself to think this one through. And unlike the heroes, I tried to do the heroes like in positive traits, but this one ended up being more the things villains shouldn't be. So we'll have to see how much we overlap this time.
Interesting.
Yes. But anyway, we'll get there. First, how are things on your side of the Atlantic?
It's good. We had guests over the weekend, so that was quite cozy and nice to some friends and their kids visiting. But of course, we couldn't hug each other due to the COVID-19 situation, so that was a bit weird, but at the same time, at least having friends in the house after a long while in isolation, that felt a bit like returning to normal at least. So that was quite nice.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, it's good to be able to see people again. And I mean, we've seen a few extra people, but it is difficult because I know even my parents had said, someone they hadn't seen happened to be driving by and saw my dad in the yard and instantly want to go hug him. And it's like, he's immunocompromised. Yeah. You can't do that. You've got to think before you tackle somebody.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. But it was also when, we had to remind ourselves when they entered that we couldn't hug each other because it feels natural. Like that's what you do. So that was a bit weird, but I think other than that, it was very nice with a bit of normality in the life again. And but I think otherwise it's just been quite a busy week. I got all my modules of the world building course completed.
I'm so impressed.
So it only took like 2 years.
And I'm so swamped with formatting and creating pictures for the books we're going to be releasing here over the summer that I'm still behind on my modules. But I'll get there.
Yeah. But in the meantime, I also got started on the self-publishing success course. That's the free course. So I started on that earlier today, and I actually uploaded the first module fully recorded and uploaded to our hosting platform as well.
That is fantastic.
So yeah, that's good. So 9 more modules to go. And I would really love it if it would be possible for me to have all of them done before summer holiday hits. Yeah. But I don't know if that's going to be possible.
And then you'll go on holiday and you'll be like, can you build the website while I'm gone? So I see where this is going. I was planning on doing my world building modules while you were on vacation. So just keep that in mind.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's not me. It's more the listeners who will be on your back because the sooner you get done, the sooner they will have their free course delivered.
True. I need to clone. I've had several people say I need to clone myself. I think I just need to clone myself.
Yeah, it can't be that hard, right?
Oh, sure. There's got to be a magic fairy or something around here who can figure it out for me.
Or a mad scientist.
Somebody.
Put in an ad in the newspaper that you're looking for a mad scientist to clone yourself.
Because I need to get more work done.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll do
See
that.
what kind of nutcracks starts responding to that ad.
It should actually be kind of fun.
Yeah, well, at least we will have some stuff to read out loud on the podcast afterward.
That's true. I'll do a Facebook ad. That'll be even more entertaining.
Yeah. Okay, but how about you then? Have you seen any people or done anything interesting over the last week?
Oh, the person who owns the land the cabin is on has had her daughters up for one's from Georgia and the other's from Boston, and so I've seen them and actually got to give everyone a little bit of a tour of the cabin and the work we did. And then what my big project has been 3 years in the making. I finally put together the trailer to my epic fantasy series, so both trilogies combined into one trailer, because if you're going to do it, you might as well just do it for everything. And so I'm so excited to have that 3-year task off my back burner list, so that feels really good.
Yeah, I can understand why. That's good.
A week on the internet with the AmWritingFantasy podcast.
Well, first of all, a huge and very warm welcome to Jeffrey Crosby, who joined us on Patreon.
That's right. I saw he joined this last week. So welcome. I hope you're enjoying all the tips that are up there on Patreon and the fun and the exclusive benefits as well.
Yeah, of course, there is a ton of posts there. I think Patreon has started. I don't know if they've already done, always, I meant to say, done this. I'm not quite sure, but I've noticed how if you go to the site if you're not logged in like we normally are, then it will list how many posts are in there in what kind of categories, and there's like more than 100 in writing and I don't know what it was, like 40 world building, or I can't remember how many, but it was a lot.
Have we been that busy? I guess so.
There's a lot of posts in there that one can dive into.
That's so.
But that was great. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for joining. And we also need to give a heartfelt thank you to Zaid, who increased his pledge.
And totally made me smile with his recent comment. I actually have saved this one, Zaid, because there's a few comments that every once in a while just make you feel like, yeah. And we were talking about some of his world building, because we have a little world building extravaganza going on my Monday post. And he replied to one of them as such an amazing answer, you rock, with a smiley face. I'm like, that's going on my little pin board for when I need a smile. So thank you for that. Sometimes it's the short, sweet, enthusiastic, and heartfelt ones that just make you kind of like, yeah, I'm saving it. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I have to say that it is those of you who choose to help us on Patreon that are the backbone of this show. It truly is, it's you who keep this show going, so it means a lot to us that you are supporting us. And if you're listening and you haven't yet checked out Patreon, there's a link in the show notes, so please go and check it out. As a Patreon supporter, you're getting access to a ton of perks on top of all those stories and posts there we just talked about, but there's a lot of other perks as well, and you get in for just $1 a month, so it doesn't get much more affordable than that. So check it out. It really makes us happy.
Yes.
Anything from the World Wide Web? Can you say that?
Well, yeah, now it's a tongue twister. I'm not going to be able to figure it out. No, I mean, AmWritingFantasy group has been a ton of fun again this week. There's been some really good posts, and they've been continuing with some of their breaking down tropes. So it's just, again, I've only been in a couple times this week. It's been such a crazy week, but I do love seeing how everyone is interacting. And it's a great resource too if you're looking for some tips, some feedback. Just everyone is so nice and responds to all the questions, and they're usually answering things before I ever even get in there. So it's a wonderful platform. So come search for us on Facebook under AmWritingFantasy, and come check us out and join the group.
And on to today's topic.
Yeah, so as we talked about at the top of the show here, we did have a lot of fun last week, actually. We
Yeah.
alternated through our list of 10 traits, and we tried to see how much overlap we had.
Yep.
So we can do the same this week, but I wonder how much overlap there's going to be. Oh, well,
I
shit, I
don't
said
know.
that last week as well.
You did, but I'm actually agreeing with you this week. Especially because you sounded surprised that mine are more what villains shouldn't be. So I'm thinking maybe we won't have quite as much overlap this time.
Yeah, I don't know. After last week's experience, I feel much less confident about my ability to have this run right because oh boy, I was wrong last week. It was
Well,
so I don't know. Should I predict how many overlapping traits we have this time?
all right. Well, I'm gonna go with under 50% this time. So do you want to go with the over? You want to switch places from last week? Or you don't
So
feel
under
like
what does that mean? 3
under?
or 4?
Um, I think we'll have about 40 to 50% overlapping out of the 20 traits each, or 10 traits each, so 20 total. I'm saying maybe 8 to 10 will overlap.
8 to 10? What do you mean?
Yeah, I think 8. We'll have 8 so yeah, 8. So about 4 or 5 of ours will at least
4 or
overlap.
5 of them.
Yeah.
And last week we had 7, was it?
Yeah. Well, I
6
think
or
it was
7.
13 because I added up.
13.
Yeah, it was 13 out of 20 overlapped. So
right. Yeah. So okay, I'll be bold this time.
all right.
I'll say 11.
All right, you say 11. Sounds good.
So that means like 6 out of 10 should be overlapping.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm saying 4 to 5. So I'm saying right around, I'm saying a little less than you.
8 or
8 to
9.
10, yeah, somewhere in there. So we're
Yeah.
still, as usual, we're really close in our guesstimate of how much overlap will be. So we'll probably end up with like 20 or something.
Oh, okay. If that happens, then I don't know. I will be lost for words for a week if that happens.
Oh, we'll have to give it a go. All right, I started last time, so I think you should kick us off with your number 10.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. So you'll need to have a notepad there so that you can keep track of our overlapping then.
I will, and so again, listeners, if you happen to hear some typing, I'm just trying to keep track of what we are, and if you keep track and find out we're wrong, please let us know if I miscount.
Okay, so I will start with number 10, and I think as well as last time around, let's try to see if we can just share a bit of thoughts about why we picked each one as well. I think that's helpful.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. So I will start out, and again, as I said in the beginning, the last 3 ones, that means spot number 8, 9, and 10, those were really hard to, I had trouble finding one. So I think it gets better the further down towards number 1 we get.
I agree.
So number 10 was being jealous.
Oh, interesting. And
yeah, because
not one I have, so that's no overlap.
Okay. But it's just like being jealous is an emotion we all can relate to. And an antagonist who is perhaps feeling jealous of what the protagonists have, or maybe could be jealous about some of the protagonist's personality traits, that the villain wishes that I could be like this and that, or do like whatever, I think it makes the villain instantly relatable,
Right.
because, as I said, jealousy is something we all understand. So I think that's a good trait.
That is a good. I don't disagree, but it's not one I thought of. But yes, it definitely makes them a very relatable person. So yes, I agree. My number 10 is not like a huge one, but it's one. It's definitely a more personal than a more generic. Hey, this is a good villain. So for me, one thing I do love in a really good villain that really kind of makes me like them is sarcasm. It sounds silly, but I love a good sarcastic villain, someone with like a dry wit and maybe a well-earned arrogant air, sort of like they not only think that they're better than everyone else, they've pretty much proven it, and they have the wit and the sarcasm to remind others with some veiled threats or amused patience. I don't know. It's maybe my little sarcastic, cynical side, but I just sometimes you get those characters who have that half smile, glint in their eye while they're also stabbing you, and I'm like, I love this guy. So that's one I like.
Yeah. I agree, and I especially like, if especially in movies, if you have this really bad villain there, and it's just like he doesn't care at all.
Yeah.
You can just see like he's completely unimpressed by by the hero or the army that is before him or whatever. It's just like, oh, whatever.
Your bugs,
I love
I'll
that kind of
squish you.
attitude.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, okay, if I was ever a supervillain, that is totally the persona I want to go for.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we was just now I shouldn't have said that, because now I lost
Oh no.
Penny Dreadful. We just talked about over this weekend that there was a new season of Penny Dreadful.
I saw that.
I haven't watched it, but our friends who visited had watched it, and they said actually that there was two gods in that new season.
Oh.
So there's a good and a bad, or a good and an evil god, and they're sort of competing about, the evil god is just being really evil and manipulating human or mankind. So I have to watch that. After he said that, I was like, okay. Now I have to watch it.
Yeah, that's funny, because we were just looking for a new show. We just started on Upload, which is quite interesting, but I'm gonna add that one to our queue because I did see it and I'd forgotten it'd come out, so thank you.
Yeah, you can watch it right after you watch Tiger King, which you are really trying to avoid.
I actually have watched up to episode 4, but that's when Adam was away, and he doesn't. It was better than I thought. I will actually finish it.
It is better than you think, yes.
I will finish it at some point when I'm not torturing my husband because he refuses to have anything to do with it. So, gotta find some quiet time.
Right.
So for sarcasm, that's not one you have, so there's no overlap?
No, I don't think so.
So that's really. So far, no, 0 for 0. All right.
Wow.
On to 9. This is unusual.
But this is gonna end up just like last week. Last week I was way off in my prediction, and now I'm gonna be way off again.
It'll be interesting.
Okay, so you want to have my number 9?
Yes, let's go for it.
Okay, Vengeful.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
I think this is a good one. Somebody who has an axe to grind. It's a believable person, but also interesting because when they are vengeful about something, we also want to understand why, and we want to learn what happened to the person. So I think that's a good trait for a villain.
That is a very good trait. And I had something maybe similar, but it's not really close enough. So I'm going to say no overlap. But
oh my God.
I know, this is so weird. I think it's because we struggled so much with this one after...
We're out of sync,
Breezing through...
There's something wrong here.
I don't know what it is. It's a Monday, but it's always a Monday. So hey. All right.
Yeah.
So 9, my number 9 is smart. And I don't just mean clever, but I mean like truly intelligent to the point of devious and outthinking the author, because goodness knows I had a villain, one of my favorite villains, and he was always outmaneuvering me. I thought he was going to win the entire trilogy. So I really did not trust him, except to trust him that he'd figure out what he was doing and tell me eventually. Right. So if this is, especially if you think about it logically though, if your villain, your antagonist is a figure who's like risen far from the ranks, like maybe started as a peasant and risen up through the government or something like that, that is someone who is going to be able to outfox just about anyone to have come so far. So I really like a master chess player who's doing the long game and can handle the short game. That's just so impresses me when I'm just like, wow.
Fully agree. Yeah, I think we'll have some overlap there.
Okay, some overlap. So finally, we got one.
I think I haven't worded it exactly like that, but I think it's close enough to some of my other ones.
All right. So I put
but number 8 is persuasive.
Ooh, I like that.
Because, I mean, there's a few of the traits on my lists yet to come here that will complement this one, so I hope it's not too much of a cheat. Because if there's too much overlap with some of my other ones. But I just think that, a villain who is able to give a logical argument as to why it is necessary to do what he or she is doing, it just works wonders in showing the reader that this is, this is a real person. It doesn't mean that the reader has to agree with the logical argument, but it's just like, as long as you can follow the logic behind it, if you see what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
I really like that, because it shows the real person behind the scheming and whatnot, right? So I like that.
I like that too. I'm trying to decide if it's similar to one I have or not. We'll have to decide when we get there. But yeah, and I kind of did the same thing. Some of mine kind of build off of each other, and I wasn't trying to cheat as well, but I thought there was kind of different veins or flavors.
Nuances.
Yeah, it's a different one. So, and some of mine, I don't have good solid words like persuasive for some of mine. Maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough. But my number 8, mine are phrases. So my number 8 is committed to what they are seeking. I mean, they are so committed, they would give up their mother, their best friend, their lover to achieve whatever their goal is. And they would do it without any hesitation or quaffing. They would be like, sacrifices must be made. You're it. So forth. Bye-bye. I like that level of commitment. They don't sit there and go, oh, God, is this the right thing to do? They just do it.
Yeah, score. Yeah. Another point for me. I think I have that as well.
Right. Excellent. Well, that's so encouraging. We have some overlap going on.
So we're getting closer to, I need to get to 11. I don't want to be off one more week now. After I miscalculated last week, I want to have this one right.
All right. We'll see.
I need to get to 11.
All right.
What am I at now?
We're at 1, 2, 2. 2? That's all I'm counting is 2.
That's a long way to 11 still.
We're only on 7. There's hope.
Okay. So number 7 is likable qualities.
Oh.
And this is sort of flipping the whole thing on its head, I guess, but I think it's a good one because the bad guy who isn't bad all the time, it's a much more complex character. And I really like it when the bad guy all of a sudden does something that is quite likable. Mm-hmm. And then the next moment he's back to being a bad guy. But I really think that works well. Because nobody's bad all the time for just the sake of being bad. So I like that.
Yes, and definitely overlap. I have a worded slightly different, but hey, we got that one in common. So that's good.
Getting closer.
Yeah, so my number 7 is, again, a phrase, but a character who is not just evil because the author needs an evil character to pit the heroes against. And then they just go and they give them like every bad trait they could think of, like he eats babies or kicks puppies or starves dragons or whatever. But I don't like just a list of evil for the sheer sake of making someone horrid that you'll just hate. They should have an actual personality, an arc, reasons for doing what they do, and all of those things. So I still think even about the Star Wars and the evil empire, and I mean, I think it took until maybe the Clone Wars and stuff, where, you know, you assume the Dark Force is the reason this is evil, but honestly, I still feel like I'm missing something like why they're so evil. There's people in the evil empire who seem pretty decent. So I don't know which side we're supposed to be rooting for. There seem to be heroes that aren't that decent, so what's the deal?
Yeah. I think we have some overlap there as well, but let's see.
All right, you can't make that up just because you want to win.
Can I?
No.
I can just start saying, which one was the second one you had before? And then, yeah, I think that too. That's my next one.
You keep asking, what's the count now? Okay, I need 2 more. Yeah, no, I might not give you the real count, so you watch out.
If you hear some typing, that's just me correcting my notes here to something else.
Okay.
All right, number 6, unethical.
Ooh.
So I think we actually have some overlap here. It's just the words that we've chosen for it, basically. But, you know, great villains, they tend to do terrible deeds.
Yes.
But what makes it work is when the villain firmly believes, like sincerely believes, that the end goal just justifies the means. So that the antagonist will, basically put aside normal moral conducts or moral considerations and just feel like this doesn't apply to him or her. That really becomes a pretty frightening character when they do stuff like that.
And what's really interesting about your number 6 is it's pretty much my number 6. I
cool.
I didn't. I like unethical.
Double score.
Yeah, double
That
score.
should give a bonus point. So if we end up at 10, then it counts as 11 because this is a bonus.
Maybe like, it kind of goes both ways, but I guess yeah, it's because I phrase it as just fully believes what he or she is doing is right, and again, I don't mean it that they're necessarily that they don't think that they're evil, but what they are doing is the right thing to do, and it's really the hero that's upsetting the balance of how things must be in their eyes. But yeah, just that total commitment of what I'm doing is the right thing to do. So I think it's almost exactly a phrase you used in there. So I think we're pretty much on par for that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting closer.
Yes, you are. You might get this one.
I hope so. Otherwise, it'll be embarrassing, and I can't sleep tonight.
Well, we'll probably end up, like
we'll
I said, well, we can't end up at 18, but we'll probably end up at like 12 or 15 just to spite us both.
Okay. At least then I'm closer this week
That's
than
true.
last week. I was so bad. Okay, number 5 is past wounds.
Ooh.
So what I mean by that is an antagonist who has suffered something in the past. It's probably some emotional wound, and then how that informs the way he or she behave in the present. I think that also makes for a compelling villain.
Mm-hmm.
It also gives the reader a plausible explanation as to why this person behaves the way he or she does. But I have to say, you also have to be careful and come up with something good here, something a bit original, because the kid who lived in the street and was an orphan or whatever, that's just, I've grown pretty tired of those. So I don't think that's a good past wound. So you have to try to find something that hasn't been seen a million times before. But if you can do that, I think it gives a good origin story for the villain, but it also gives a good explanation as to why they might think a bit differently than the rest of us.
Oh, now, see, I'm wondering is it possible to have an anti-overlap that might erase a point?
Only if we are 12, then it will count, because then we get to 11. So then absolutely, but it's only something I can answer in hindsight. I don't know yet if it's possible.
Well, it should be a double anti-overlap, because my number 5 is not just evil because of a past trauma. So I prefer a failed character arc, even if it's a character arc we haven't seen in the current book, something that happened before the story started, but sort of like where the character they had a choice of like the good internal motivation, but they chose to go with like power or fame or control instead of doing the good thing, protecting the weak or something like that. So for me, like someone abusing the character as a child is not a good excuse to be evil as an adult. I want to see a series of bad choices and bad decisions that went wrong, that led them to do increasingly evil or misguided things. I like that set of series and not just, this event happened in the past and therefore I'm bad. To me, it's almost like a victim mentality, and I want to see someone who's just taken the wrong turn, even despite themselves, I guess. I like a more nuanced growth. So almost the opposite of yours, if I'm reading it correctly.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with what you're saying. I don't know if it's completely opposite, because it's more like, okay, so I don't want to go with the orphan kid who lived in the street, right? But okay, so something terrible happened. And so it more becomes like your coping mechanism for how you survived, So, okay, something bad happened, and I tried to do the nice thing, and I tried to talk to the people or whatever, right? Nothing happened. It didn't help me. Then I beat them up, and that actually helps, something like that, right?
True.
And then it builds on top of each other, because then I start incorporating into my mindset that, okay, if I need to get my way, I need to beat people up. And then you do that as a child, and then when you get older and you get adult, then it sort of accumulates into nastier and nastier things that you or the villain is doing there.
Yeah, so maybe it is an overlap, because we're basically both saying that maybe there was something that started the tendency towards the evil side.
You need some sort of trigger, right?
Trigger, and then after that, though, that's not the only excuse. They also continue on a path that develops that, makes it more nuanced, and keeps reinforcing it into this evil character. So I guess it is the same, and again on the exact same number, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where we end up, and then we'll decide if it was the same or if it needs to add or subtract.
Okay.
Depends on where we end.
All right.
If we add 10 or 12 in the end, then
we'll see. All right.
All right. Number 4. This is intelligent. And I find this one important. It's very much along the same lines as what you've said already, because I don't think that there's anything scary about a villain who just keeps doing stupid mistakes and, the chips keeps falling into the hero's favor. That's really annoying. I don't like that as a reader, and it's incredibly frustrating. But a villain who is extremely intelligent and outmaneuvers everybody at every turn, that's just, I love that stuff.
Definitely. And yes, that's why it was my number 9, but it's to me it's just an important feature to have in a villain, and that's why it probably made it to your number 4.
Yeah.
And what's funny is my number 4 was pretty much your number 7. So mine has good traits. So that relates to it relates to what I said before about believing what they're doing is right, but they earnestly believe they have the answer to an important question, or they are the only one who is powerful or can get this done right. Or like you said, maybe they love someone, or they're kind of children or misfits, but there's truly something deeply decent somewhere in them.
Right.
I think that's so important, because no one is so 100% truly evil. Maybe if you're writing Christian lit or a religious lit, and you have to have a devil that is truly, truly, truly all-encompassing evil. But heck, I mean, even if you watch Supernatural, most of the devil characters on there are actually kind of likable. So it's just kind of the world right now. We see things gray. I think that's important.
But it also balances it out, right? And because it makes for a more like 3-dimensional character if you also have some good traits in there.
And I think it's interesting to have a character, an evil character, that's more nuanced, and they feel more real, because, again, not everyone is that bad.
No. Okay, we're into top 3
yes,
now.
Yes, we are. I'm not going to count up how many we have.
Serious.
I know. We've had quite a few overlaps recently, so we'll have to see how this ends.
Yes. So let's see if we can agree in the top 3.
All right.
So my number 3 is formidable.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
And yeah, the word formidable doesn't have to be understood as raw strength. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. It can also relate to, well, some of the stuff we already talked about, so being like exceptionally cunning. But it could also be a person who has great wealth and a lot of resources at their disposal. Something that just makes them a formidable, well, not villain, but more opposition to the hero as such. So that it adds tension, and the more tension we get, the better the story we have, right? So formidable is a very good thing.
That's going to be another one where I might have to ask the question of, do we have an anti-overlap? But it's not my number 3. We'll come back to it soon. Obviously, we only have 3 left. So my number 3 is, again, this is where I'm starting to get into the negatives. My number 3 is they may not be evil at all. My favorite villains are not necessarily evil. I mean, I truly love a good antagonist that is almost like a competitor to the protagonist. So they can just be taking a different approach on what needs to be done, and it's more like a race to see who can get the upper hand and solve the issue first. Because to me, not every story has to be good versus evil to make it full of tension. Not every hero has to be 100% justifiably correct and right and good. So it's sort of the, hey, you know what? Your hero, your villain, does not need to be necessarily evil. They can just be a very nuanced character in a different position with a different take on things, and it's just not working for your hero. Whatever they believe maybe works for their set of people, but it doesn't work for the set of people that the hero is from. And so that's where the clash is. They're right in each in their own way, but by being right, they're hurting each other somehow. Those are much more nuanced novels, but I do find them engaging.
Oh, Very interesting. I think that overlaps
Oh
with
no!
the one I have
So
coming.
okay, interesting. All right, so I'll put an overlap, and I'll leave my question mark with your formidable to see if it is like one of my final two. We'll have to answer that soon.
Okay. Yes. Okay, my number
Yeah.
2 is one that you have more or less already said word by word, I
Oh.
think. I just probably labeled it differently. I called it determination. But this is basically just the villain who is unyielding.
Unyielding,
Somebody who will
nice.
pursue a goal until the very end, no matter what it
Yep.
takes. And that is pretty scary.
Goodness.
And that's what you already said as well.
Yes, definitely. Just someone who is committed, I think is what I put it.
Yes.
All right, so
Yes.
definitely an overlap there. So my number 2, and this is my anti to your formidable, is not all powerful. So I think I've seen it more that the opponent is the villain's too formidable. But I like ones who are not all powerful. They're, either whether you're calling magic, power, wealth, they're also working in a system of constraints. Plus, they have to be able to be defeated, so they have some weakness, blind spot, or arrogance that's going to leave them exposed. So that's my number 2, is that they're not all powerful, so they're not 100% formidable. So I don't know, is that an overlap or is that not an overlap?
But does formidable necessarily mean that you're all powerful?
No, not necessarily. That's why I'm thinking it's not quite the same thing, so we might not have an overlap there. It's similar, but different.
Yeah. No, I think you're saying something slightly different, to be honest. I didn't mean mine to sound like you have to be unbeatable or something like that. That was not the point of it, but I think still you might be saying something slightly different.
Right, so we're going to call those no overlaps, but they're almost along the same veins where, there's this, they are incredibly challenging on one hand, but on the other, they have weaknesses as well. So they're kind of like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. Difficult. But okay. Is it
I
number
think we're
1?
on number 1. All right, this will be interesting. What is your number 1 answer?
Yeah, so this was the one that I found most important out of all the traits to give to a villain.
Oh, yeah?
And I called this one motivation.
Oh, nice.
And what I meant by that was, an antagonist who clearly knows what he or she wants. That's just a lot more interesting. And again, it is overlapping some of the stuff you said earlier. So one is never evil for the sake of being evil. So a good antagonist who believes in what he or she is doing is very important. And also the fact that the antagonist will see him or herself as the hero,
yes,
while thinking that the protagonist is the real villain. So it's one of those eye of the beholder kind of things that you have already mentioned.
Yes, that's when when the villain truly believes what they're doing is right and justifiable, and it's the hero who's the evil one. And you get sucked into their mindset almost. That is a fantastic character.
That's the way it should be.
It is. Okay, I kind of cheated because my number 1 is very similar to my hero number 1, and that it is, again, that you can take these lists and all these ideas, but what I want is a well-developed, a fully developed character. And with an antagonist, I actually really like a point of view character, because like I just said, I want to be sucked into their mind. I want to see the world through their lens and see. It makes me question what, the hero is seeing. Is it right? I like that kind of internal tension of getting to decide who is the right viewpoint. So I don't want them to have all the traits we listed, which some of them kind of do contradict each other. So they shouldn't just be the list of these, well, not quite 20, but 20 different traits. They should be something unique. And again, I mean, one of my favorite villains actually ends up joining the heroes in the second trilogy because he was such a cool character. He's still not good, but he's still not evil. He's just very complex. And I guess if I could have chosen one word for a character for a villain, complex maybe should have been my number 1 choice.
Yeah, that's also a good one.
All right. Well, is it time to add up?
So what's the score?
Right. That overlap, my number 1, does that count as an overlap or not?
I'll decide once I know what the score is.
But I'll put a question mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 out of the 20, which is the exact same as last week. What?
Really?
Yeah, we had 13 out of 20 last week.
I hadn't expected that.
No, I didn't
honest.
either. I thought we'd be further apart. So, and as usual, we tended to agree with each other about the ones we chose, including Complex, the one that my 11th one I've thrown out there. Oh, that's too funny.
Oh, interesting.
So we're consistent.
But I feel good.
All right.
This went a lot better than last week.
Yes, it did. You guessed a little higher. I wouldn't have guessed 13, but that is hilarious that we're totally consistent.
Yeah, apparently so. even though creating these lists felt a lot harder than
it really did.
Week.
Last week I sent you Bonnie Tyler's "I Need a Hero." I couldn't. No pop songs came in my head. Maybe if anyone listening has a good villain theme song, just go ahead and put it in the notes. We obviously need some villain.
Yeah, I would like to
we need some villain-inspired music.
Yeah, what would be a good villain song? You know, hit us up in the Facebook group, on Twitter, or in the comment sections here on the podcast, whatever. You know, I would like to know what's a good villain song.
That would be a good one. I think that's what we're lacking.
But I think overall, you know, take from this list of 20 different things where 13 of them was overlapping, very close to what I said. I just had to put that in there just in case anybody was doubting.
Jesper,
but it's very close to what I said.
Let me make it official. Jesper won this week. I won last week though.
I can't remember that. But I think nevertheless, you know, take what you can from these 20 items and use it as inspiration. I think overall the antagonist is a critical part of any story, and he or she is the one who forces the hero to find smart and clever ways to solve his or her problems, and can also at times serve as the catalyst for the character arc. So all of what we talked about here is actually really important.
Absolutely. And hey, sometimes by seeing the antagonist lens, maybe the character, the hero, will grow and see a bigger version of the world than they would have otherwise.
Absolutely true. So take what you can from this, and next Monday, Autumn and I will discuss whether or not marketing counts as working on your author business or not.
If you like what you just heard, there's a few things you can do to support the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast. Please tell a fellow author about the show and visit us at Apple Podcast and leave a rating and review. You can also join Autumn and Jesper on patreon.com/AmWritingFantasy. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get awesome rewards and keep the AmWriting Fantasy Podcast going. Stay safe out there and see you next Monday.